Well, obviously, there's been a lot going on with regard to the Labour leadership election, but I think it's a bit unfair, to be quite honest. It's interesting that clearly the media are concentrating on what's the most, to use a euphemistic term, the most sexy story going on at the moment. But in normal circumstances, I think people ought to be looking a bit more at what Mr. Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, is actually achieving, because it's been a good week for Starmer, or a good couple of weeks for Starmer. And perhaps we could have a look at some of those figures and see what we think. I mean, you'll have noticed over the last month or so that very little has been emanating from Reform and Mr. Farage regarding migration, because that's been Mahmood, who's now in charge, obviously at the Home Office, has played a blinder fairly recently. Net migration is at its lowest since March 2023. And it's showing as 171,000 this last year, which is down from 944,000, so almost a million. Now, I know
we should say that included Ukraine and Hong Kong, so you've got to be a bit careful.
Well, but Ukraine and Hong Kong, I don't think the figures were that significant in that regard. And you could argue, I suppose, that some of those figures were as a result of things that came about from the last Conservative administration. I wouldn't argue that. They've tightened up Labour, so there's a lot more that Labour have done. But that notwithstanding, that's quite some achievement. And the figures with regard to the boat crossings down 30% as well. So a third less.
Oh, that's border control.
Well, and they've also deported a lot more than they were before. So that is an issue that they've got control of now, I think. It'd be interesting. I have noticed that Mr. Mr. Farage and Reform, they're the same interchangeable now. They're concentrating on other issues now. They're trying to turn their fire internally. I mean, we haven't got time here to talk about their latest wheeze in terms of overtime, but we will no doubt cover that at a different point.
Yeah.
NHS waiting lists as well. Now, obviously, Wes Streeting has decided that he's going to resign. And
yeah, I'm very unhappy about that. He had an important job for 5 years.
Well, he did,
and he's just as it looked as if there'd been some progress, he's off.
Yeah, 310,000 down.
Can I just challenge that? I did hear that they've been removing dead people who don't really need their operations. So,
well, that's always been the case, isn't it? You can't really argue if they've included them in the past that they can't include them now.
I think they've removed more dead people.
They've removed more dead. Do you think?
I heard that's one of the reasons. Anyway, all right, I'll give it face value.
Give me that. Yeah, it's a success story, and
feels like it. Yeah,
and as is hitting 65.3% of patients being treated with
hitting 65. That doesn't sound like good patient management.
5.3% of patients were treated within 18 months of referral. That's up from 59.8 the previous year.
That's progress, isn't it?
So
what's his target? 80, isn't it? 80, 90% was his target? One of the visions thing?
I think it is, yeah. I think it's somewhere. So there's a way to go yet.
No,
but we're
progress.
moving it.
No, I'll
moving in the right direction.
I'll give him that. Yeah.
Elective activities, so surgery reached its highest level, delivering 18.6 million treatments and operations within 12 months. Its highest level ever. And that is some achievement. And urgent and emergency care waiting times also saw an improvement. A&E patients, as the proportion of A&E patients seen within 4 hours year on year, rose to 75.4%.
I think it's because you took part in that survey. I think that's made the difference.
Which survey is that then?
Well, you've even forgotten it, haven't you? Wes published a survey of what you wanted from your NHS, and you were the first one to do it, weren't you?
I was one of the first to do it. I went to a car park in Asda down the road. I sat there for 20 minutes, and I forget what now, what was it you got for that? You got the thanks of the grateful nation, but there was something else as well.
The
I
flu?
can't remember what it was now. No, yeah.
Sorry, I distracted you.
Yeah, you digress. This is something that'll interest you because I know you're interested in the figures.
Oh, I am.
In terms of the fiscal nature of what we've achieved as well, we've got this big new trade deal that we signed with the Gulf states, which is bringing an extra £3.8 billion a year.
That sounds good. Which
again is something. So, and of course the projections from the IMF have been revised upwards in terms of how they expect the UK economy to grow, which has grown 0.6%, which I think the original projection was 0.4% in the first quarter. So again, quite an uplift in. So these are all good news stories, but because
Mm,
of this circus that's going on in Manchester,
mm,
nobody's hearing about. Now, the question I have for you, and I know we discussed this very briefly on the other pod we've done
mm.
with regard to the Labour leadership, is are the public really interested in what's actually happening on the ground, the actual figures, how it affects their lives in real terms, or has this turned into a reality show as to who we get as our next prime minister?
I think the answer to is yes to both. I think most of the electorate they're judging the success of the government by what's happening to them right now. And there's just a feeling, isn't there? As you pay your shopping bills, you fill up your car, you're worried about can you get away for that holiday because
Mm.
is the jet fuel going to run out? Everyone's telling you that you're not going to be able to afford your electric and gas in a couple of months' time. They're very interested in how it feels to them too. Probably if you were to do a poll this week when the sun's out and everyone's just forgotten about everything and enjoying themselves, you'd
Mm.
get a bounce. But take that out of the equation when the wind's howling and it's pouring down. Public are very interested in what's going on now. But to your second question, has it become a circus? It's absolutely become a circus. We have ourselves to blame. You know, we're on social media. We're publishing something now which is on social media.
We are. We
The
are.
attention span, it used to be, what do they say, the attention span of a gnat? Well, I
Mm.
think the gnat's attention span is 10 times now. What people just want the next story, the next fix, the next
Yeah.
sensation,
Yeah.
and off we go. And it's not about the politics, it's not about the economy, it's about this is going to be interesting. That'll distract me. Let's do that.
Well, that's half the problem, or
That's
it's
my analysis, Sean.
yeah, it's the major problem really at the end of the day at the moment, isn't it? That you don't hear when you ask all these vox pops you hear in the street when they're
Mm.
asking people about what they think of it. Generally speaking, people will say, "Oh, they'll either say food's more expensive, this, that's more expensive, that's more expensive," which is it's almost like a reflection, a mirror. They're being told this by the media. The media are telling them, "Oh, things are much more things," and they're reflecting it back. And I think to a certain extent, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy then, in that things become more expensive. And the other thing which I find quite
Well, hang on.
disturbing,
It is a matter of fact that the average grocery shop is now 50% more than it was 5 years ago.
absolutely,
Yeah,
but in the
that's
last,
a fact. That's not
no,
emotional.
no, 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 that's true. But in the last year, 2 years, you'll know as well that average wages have gone up in excess of inflation. So effectively, people should be better off. They are better off than
There's
they
always
were
a
two
thought.
years
You know,
ago.
which I don't understand why anyone never talks about this. That's all pre-tax.
Mm.
So you're not better off because your wages might have gone up by more as a percentage, but then you're either going to be
But
paying
you're always
25,
paying tax.
40 or
That's not
45%.
that's not the no. That's not an argument. You've always been paying tax. You're talking
It
about an
is an
overall
argument.
figure.
If
It
you'd
isn't.
have
No, no, no,
anyway, but
no. You
I'm
don't pay
letting you
any
have
more.
these
No,
wins
you
because you obviously want to
don't.
have your wins. Keep going.
You don't pay any more tax than you did do 5 years
Do you
ago.
want to go
That's
down this
just
rabbit hole? Do you want to go
yeah.
down this rabbit hole, or do you want to
You
move on?
took us down this rabbit hole, but the trouble is you've been
Well,
pushed
I'm a
back up the
rabbit.
rabbit hole now, haven't you? That's the gun's come back up the rabbit hole. So I no, I don't accept that. I think people are fundamentally better off, but I think
No, they're not.
where we are now is we're in a personality culture. And you hear all these people, and this is what worries me most. You hear all these people say, "I can't stand Starmer." Well, why? And he's evil. He's the worst prime minister we've ever. It's just nonsense. It just is total nonsense to say that he's the worst prime minister we've ever had. To say this, that you've had him for what, less than 2 years. Give the guy a chance. Let him see through his term. I mean, as we discussed before, that ought to be a minimum that is allowed to see through a term, and
No,
then let the electorate
yeah, I
decide
agree
on
with
it.
that. I'm not a great fan of Starmer, but
But why is there all this personality politics? We didn't get this. I mean, going back to when we were younger, when we had Ted Heath and we had Harold Wilson, people didn't agree with the Conservatives or didn't agree with Labour and didn't like their policies. But you didn't get all this hatred towards an individual.
no, well, we've already said it. It's because of there is so much more consumption of media now in the form of vignettes, isn't it? It's 10-second
Mm.
this, 20-second that, and it tends to be negative, doesn't it? You don't very often read a piece about a politician, what a great guy they are, unless it's a party
No.
political piece. And I think people see far more negative vignettes than they do positive, and it influences what they think.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that Starmer's made some horrendous mistakes. He seems to have sort of packed 5 years worth into 18
I,
months, but yeah,
I would argue that, but yeah, I agree he's
of
not
course
been.
you would.
But
Yeah, yeah.
give the guy a break anyway.
Give it a go, right, okay. Would you have said that about Boris or no? Okay, move on.
Boris made huge mistakes. Huge mistakes. I don't think Starmer's given away billions in terms of false, unexamined contracts in terms of PPE, is he? He's not done that. And he's not partied. Anyway, we'll talk more about this on another day.